Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Sense. I'm Rod Gantus, and my co-host over there, yonder on the other screen,
Hello.
is none other than Mr. Bill Elson.
Thank
Hi.
you. Good
How are you,
morning.
Bill? Good morning.
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm really excited about our guest today because we've been trying to get him on, and he's a busy guy. And
Yes, very
oh,
busy.
one of my favorites designers in Southern California, really just a really good guy, and I'm always inspired by what he's doing and what he's moving on. So without further ado, why don't you tell our audience who we have on for them today?
Well, today, as you can see behind you, they can see behind you, Rad, we have the incredible Christopher Kennedy, who is one of the influential designers across the United States with modernism. Chris is actually a California native. He grew up in Northern California and he relocated to Palm Springs, and he's a major influencer of the modernism style and modernism life. And he has 2 books out, and he has a new studio, and he also launched a brand new website. So
actually, I have one of his books right here, actually.
Yes,
So.
Modernism, making mid-century modern and California modern. And we're going to learn all about modernism and Mr. CK, as he likes to be called. So,
well, and I see that CK is on camera for us. I will tell you something, my friend.
On camera.
I love the fact that you are very bold, even in how you autograph your books.
Of course.
Oh.
It looks like it's the same signature. Yes.
Just an old Sharpie that was getting a bit fat, much
Well,
like myself.
you made that old Sharpie look pretty darn good. And Dream in Color is how you signed it, and it seems very appropriate. So thanks for being with us today, Christopher, or CK.
Yeah.
Which one
in
do you
your
prefer,
bio,
by the
maybe
way?
you could tell us, you said that you used to tour model homes. I did that too when I was a little boy. So maybe you could tell us how you began your illustrious career and everything.
Oh, sure. I wanted to be an architect since I was like 7 years old. I can't recall wanting to do anything else. I was drawing floor plans and furniture and stained glass windows, believe it or not that I do any stained glass, but I think my dad got me my first book on Frank Lloyd Wright when I was 12 years old, and all I applied for college was schools for architecture. It's all I've ever wanted to do. Or journalism, actually. I think they made you have a backup. So I chose journalism because I like to write. So I went to school for architecture, got a 5-year Bachelor of Architecture degree from a college in Springfield called Drury. And I applied to Cornell and I applied to Tulane and got into those schools. My mom said, "You're not going to New Orleans. That's not going to happen." And I learned that it can snow at Cornell in Ithaca, New York until May, and I'm a California guy. So I said, no, probably not. So I went to a small private school called Drury, and it was a wonderful place to go to school. And I wanted to be a Disney Imagineer. And long story, sad story, that didn't happen. I did do summers at Walt Disney World on their college program and loved it. And I actually got right after school, I got an MBA. I actually stayed at Drury, and in the 5th year of architecture, you could begin getting a master's in business.
Yeah.
And I kind of figured out like 3rd or 4th year, I didn't want to follow the typical architecture path. I didn't want to draw bathrooms for 5 years and then sit for a really hard exam. It just didn't. I kind of knew my calling was different. And so I got a degree in business and I graduated with that. I was going to go back to Disney and do Imagineering. And I literally, actually, this is back when you had to like call and fact. I don't think I'm that old, but I got approved for this like advanced internship in Imagineering, which is Disney's department for all the building and the design and everything you see built at Disney. And I got approved for the internship in Imagineering, which is a really big deal. And then I was calling over a summer to like confirm my internship because I think you had to back then. I mean, we had email, but I don't know. It's like 99.
It's also Disney. It's also Disney, Chris, right?
What's that?
I said it's also Disney. I mean, I had a little bit of an experience with Imagineering too, because it's an amazing place to go.
Yeah.
But Disney has its own culture and an own way of doing things, for sure.
Absolutely. And Florida has its own culture too, because it's literally like a city. It's 50 square miles. That's the size of San Francisco, where I was born. So I was calling to confirm. I was supposed to like leave in a week, and they said, "Oh, the person that hired you is no longer here." And kind of no, we don't. have your position.
Oh man.
So it was soul crushing. And that's, I think, when I decided to get my master's in business. I'm like, well, I have a summer, so I might as well just stay at my school and begin the master's in business program. And then I graduated with that in the year 2000, and it was the tech bubble. If anyone remembers,
Yep.
I think you're old enough for the tech boom.
Mhm.
And I was offered jobs at Disney. Like, I actually met the manager of corporate staffing in LA, and she's like, do you want to go to Singapore? Do you want to go to Tokyo, like wherever they have, or LA? And I'm like, no. And I turned down all of it, and I went to work as a financial planner and stockbroker, because it was like the tech
In Northern
bubble,
California?
a new MBA. I shocked my parents and myself. And I kind of wrote, of course, the market crashed the minute I got to Los Angeles. I blame myself for that to this day.
Yeah.
And so I stuck that out for a few years. And then as I write about my books, my dad passed away and my mom got very sick. And I was in my 20s and didn't like what I was doing. And I just moved to Palm Springs to reinvent myself at 27 years old. I had a new boyfriend who was a sweet Southern travel nurse. And so we knew that he could work here in healthcare. And I just thought, I don't know how I'll do it, but we moved here at 27 years old. And to say I was the youngest person in Palm Springs isn't even bragging. I mean, it's just simple mathematics. And Palm Springs wasn't as cool back then like it is now. I mean, I think it was so cool. But, Sonny Bono had kind of driven out a lot of the business, and it certainly hadn't experienced the renaissance it has today.
Right.
So I found myself here at 27 years old and didn't know what I would do. I was sort of overeducated for everything, but underexperienced for everything too. And I was about to go to Starbucks and work as a barista, because I literally couldn't find a job. There isn't a lot of industry here. And I was at a dinner party, and I met a guy that said, oh, he worked for a design firm, like a 10-person firm, which I think is kind of a big firm. And he said, his boss that day had just said they needed to hire an assistant. So I got that job. I went to work for it's the firm that was Steve Chase Associates.
Yes,
Steve
big
Chase
name.
was the protege of Arthur Elrod, who's an icon himself, who built, of course, the house up on the hill that was the climax scene of the James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever.
Right.
And so I found myself as a project assistant at 27 years old in this firm here in Palm Springs.
So Chris, I got to ask you
Wow.
this because sometimes you don't get a chance to delve deeply, and I thank you so much for sharing so openly, right? But no, I'm serious, because it's not the same path, but I have this approach to life that just by virtue of accidentally going through what I've gone through, that life tends to have a little path for you if you should be open enough to allow yourself to take it. And it sounds to me like you had plans. I think you're more brave than I am, in that you probably always had a little bit of willingness to risk, like to go from an architecture degree to add a business and to pivot. I mean, Disney says, no, I'm going to go do a master's degree. And then boom, here I am in LA and the market crashes. I mean, those are pretty powerful blows to happen to you when you're young, right? And
I guess so. I think I'm still very, very privileged and very lucky. So
so when you look back, how much, because I want to bring it back down the road here to what just recently happened with the last few months, right? But I think what I'm seeing is that it's kind of like a muscle, right? If you don't exercise that resiliency muscle, then you don't have it to fall back on, right? And one of the things that I've been saying to a lot of people that are older, you're younger than I am, is that, some of us who have been through some of these economic meltdowns, like the real estate market in 91, 2008, all this stuff. When this happened, this COVID pandemic happened, and the impact it had on the economy, we realized it was serious, but we also realized that we had been through it down before, and there is a day after.
Yes, I've been through it before, and there is a day after.
Which is difficult to explain to somebody who hasn't been through it, because it really seems like the sky is falling and Chicken Little, and everything is coming to an end. Do you think that is something that maybe we don't really emphasize enough with creative field, like designers and people like that, where they're really passionately engaged, and so they're giving of their soul, and we don't really prepare them enough for these ups and downs professionally? That we could maybe do a better picture?
Artists, are sensitive, and when COVID happened or those things happen, like, what choice do you have? And I think you have to look. I'm just a big, woo-woo guy, as Rad, and I'm The Secret and all of that. I'm like, look for, what to be grateful for. I
Yeah.
mean, people have it so much worse than I do. I got to wake up this morning and live in a beautiful place, and my mom couldn't walk at the end of her life. So I just think you have to look for what you're grateful for, and when you look for those things, you tend to find a lot to be grateful for, and they tend to multiply. Like when we went on lockdown, I kind of did a day of like for me, because it was in March, and that's a weird time for me. Like my design business, we normally, that's our high season in Palm Springs. Like we finish a lot of homes by the holidays, as all designers do. And then we do most of the remodels in like the summer when people are gone.
Right.
So we're usually we're not really like normally well under construction in like February, March, April, because people want to be in their homes enjoying them. So we didn't have a huge pipeline. I'd already signed 2 big summer remodels, who of course called the first day to cancel. And I had like 2 days of poor me. And then I looked at my roster and I was like, I'm such a busy jerk. I'm like, I've been ignoring these clients over here that frankly are dream projects for most designers, and I'm treating them like scraps. So when I looked at what I already had on the books, I was like, wow, this is a pretty full docket that I was kind of ignoring because I'm a busy jerk. And so I just looked at what I already had in front of me. And I think that's, when you look at your blessings, they tend to multiply.
And I think that was a big part of what happened this during these last few months. I mean, if anybody was, I think it was a gift, to be honest. I think it was a gift, right? That it allowed us to go back and maybe bring it back down to the basics, and to have a sense, and then that divisiveness and that polarization that was happening, and the competitiveness versus collaboration. I think we probably have more of an appreciation for that now. Do you agree?
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear more about, Arthur Elrod and Steve Chase were incredible pioneers in the contemporary architectural movement. So how did that help you evolve your idea, your taste for modernism? Or maybe we could have the audience listen.
Sure, you bet. So, so Arthur was an amazing guy. He was killed in a car accident at 48 years old, I think. And there's a new book out on Arthur Elrod, published by Gibbs Smith, who's my publisher as well. So check it out. It's an amazing book. And Steve Chase is an underrated hero. I think he's had more covers of AD, maybe still, than anyone in history. Martin, my friend, might be getting close. But Steve Chase did everyone. If you don't know who Steve Chase is, I mean, he in the 90s and 80s did everyone's home. I mean, McDonald's, the Kroc family. I mean everyone. He was the decorator in Palm Springs and worldwide in the 80s and 90s, and he passed away of AIDS in the 90s. So I went to work for the firm that was carrying on his legacy. There were 5 partners and Steve Chase Associates, and just before I was hired, they'd kind of finally just gone their separate ways and were selling the building he built. And so I worked for Randy Patton, who's a very talented designer, whose name you will not know, and I might get to that in a minute. But so I interviewed with him, and he was like, well, most of our houses are, our average project is 8,000 square feet, perhaps new construction or big remodel. Our average furnishings budget is like $1 million. And so I found myself in this 10-person firm. So Randy had 3 project managers, and each of them had an assistant. Well, one didn't, and that's why I was hired. So I was working so there was Randy, and then there was 3 project managers, and then I was one of their assistants. And I was also kind of like a gopher. Like I was young and able-bodied, and so I was sort of running around. I remember one day, like Randy would come in on Sundays, and I was thinking, why is he working on Sunday? Well, now I know why, because when you own your own business, I'll be working tomorrow as well. And he sent me this list, and it was like the Devil Wears Prada, but it was like, I want you to go to so-and-so nursery and take this gainy pot and get this in it, and then like go and get this fabric and choose the bench. And I'm like, okay, this is sort of crazy, but what a dream job like to be having, to just run around, like do all these things. And so I was there for 8 months, to answer your question. And I did like this much of it. And then after 8 months, we had bought a nice townhouse, and I had decorated it, and some people had seen it. It was just a classic story, right? Age old, how I became a decorator story. That's not just unique to me. And I had a couple of projects on the side. And so I was trying to, negotiate all that. And to say I didn't know what I didn't know, actually, I don't tell the story very often. I say that I left after 8 months because I had some jobs on the side. The truth is, the guy that I was working for, the project manager who I was assisting, also had some jobs on the side. And we were both let go on the same day. And I guess, because I'd actually already asked to cut back my hours to part-time, and that wasn't what the principal was looking for. And I was very upfront about my jobs on the side. And I guess the guy that I was assisting, the project, wasn't, and was actually like sending out requests on the company stationery for his own business. And so we were both actually terminated on the same day. And apparently Randy said very nice things about me, but not all the nice things about the guy that I was working for. So I actually was let go, and I was pushed out of the nest. And it was, and of course, again, devastating. Of course, I was like making, $14
The best thing that could have happened. Yeah.
Huge economic loss. But it pushed me out of the nest. And I tell people, you know what? It was the best thing to ever happen to me. So.
Yeah, it's true how that's really funny. You and I over a couple of.
So I guess it's Saturday. I've had too much coffee, and I'm telling
No,
all my secrets.
no. You know what? And you and I will have something stronger than coffee, and we will have some shared conversations about that, because it's true. Sometimes, I started off sort of a little bit different. I did the business path, and then I ended up falling into interior design, even though originally I wanted to go do civil engineering at my dad's alma mater in Beirut, and I would have probably gone into architecture because civil engineering would have been too dry. When I wasn't able to do that, my mom didn't say, don't go to New Orleans. She said, don't go to Beirut. There's a war going on. So I said, okay, fine. And at 16, maybe, God rest her soul, maybe she had a point at 16. And then ended up basically doing an MBA, doing an undergrad in economics, doing an MBA at Drucker, and then basically falling into being back on job sites, working for a friend of my dad's. And here we go, the 91 crash. What am I going to do? I'll go do arts and craft for 12 weeks, leads into another interior design degree. And then I go, and I'm like very clear. I'm like, I want to do hospitality. I'm going to go work for hospitality. I do the letters. I remember sending them 10 days waiting for a response, blah, blah, blah. No faxes even. And start off at Design One, which ended up being Sue Firestone and Associates. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. Awesome. At $18,000 a year, right? I'm like, awesome, working on a Disney project with Kirk Nix and all these guys, right? Yeah. Right. He's a friend. And basically then work at Hirschbender in Atlanta. And I'm going, oh my God. Like, this is like playing in the Playhouse, right? I don't care if you pay me at this point. Traveling all over, come back, work for W18G. And then boom. And Design One, 90 days in, they close their shops. Boom, another hit. W18G, 3 years later, boom, another hit. But it's really funny because I'm seeing a lot of parallels. Like there really is sometimes those failures, or what you see as being setbacks, in fact, are setting you up for what is really to come.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite quotes is by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and it says, "You don't have to see the whole staircase; just take the first step." And I think you just take that step and put one foot in front of the other. And one of my others is by Rainer Wilkie, and it's like when I was closeted in college and struggling with being gay, there's sort of some. Like you live along one day into the answer is the bottom line of the quote. And so, one day I didn't know how I would do it, but you sort of realize you wake up one day and it's longer than you want it to be, that I want to achieve things until I was 35 and I'm 44. And is it okay? Absolutely. You just take the first step. Absolutely. Take the first step.
Yeah.
How did you define your own modernism look? I mean, you have an incredible look that's very popular with obviously all your clients, and now you have the new furniture line, and you are very influential in Modernism Week in Palm Springs. So how did all that evolve?
I'm just lucky, Bill. I've loved contemporary design since my days in school for architecture. It was required at Drury to study abroad, so I spent a summer in Paris, studying architecture, and we went, and we toured, we toured Corbusier's, a Villa Savoie, and like all this, Corbusier. Actually, we were staying in a Corbusier designed dorm in Paris. And so I've loved modern contemporary design since I was in school. So I guess it was fate or kismet that I found my way to Palm Springs. And when I was doing my own projects 15 years ago, what was popular 15 years ago, you guys? I'm going to ask, this is my quiz. What do you think was the style that's popular when I opened my doors in 2004?
Mad Men.
No,
yet.
not even.
You
Tuscan.
didn't like modernism back then?
You're
Oh,
probably,
Tuscan?
It was Tuscan. It was starting in New York. I think you're right, and I'm sure you were ahead of the curve, Bill. But it was popular in California. Was Tuscan? Like the
Tuscan.
Lane movie had come out. McMansions were being built all over, so everything was Italian and Tuscan. And I was doing contemporary, and so I had to use a lot of like contract sources, which you would know, Rob. But I had to use like Freeform and Maharam and Bernhard.
right, because you really couldn't get those resources and materials unless it was in a commercial.
My hero icon was doing a line of furniture, but really there weren't that many sources for contemporary. I was using a lot of commercial sources, and so and the people that had hired me, I remember one of my first clients. Actually, so this woman, I got a call from a furniture store a friend of mine owned up the street. It's no longer there. And he said this, this like nice lady came in and was asking him for help laying out her living room, and it was beyond his scope. And, like, what do I really do? I'm like, well, I think I do interior design. And so he referred me, and I remember so I go to see her house in a Rancho Mirage, like right down from where Gerald Ford lived. And I pull in the gate, and I pull to this 5,000 square foot house, brand new. And I meet her, and it was kind of, it was all those big contemporary houses from, the mid 2000s, a weird layout, open rooms. She's like, I'm gonna try to lay this room out. And she says that Steve Chase had actually done her previous 2 homes. And she had downsized to this 5,000 square foot house, which I think she was probably almost 70 at this point. And she took this chance on this unknown kid. And I said my rate was like $75 an hour. And she goes, that's fine.
Was she chuckling under her breath at the time?
And I remember I put the design together. She flew back to Chicago. I had a point, I promise. But she was probably 65, 70, and to her, modern was cool because that's when it was becoming popular in the 60s when she was coming of age. And so we think about old people being grandma and this, but she was, to me, she was 65 15 years ago, and she loved modern design. And she found me, and I'm pulling in this gate, and then I put this design package together. I remember driving through her gate again, and I think our whole package for furniture was like $35,000. Now, I dealt with a lot of money when I was like a financial planner, but it's like, it's all woo-woo, and they're not writing the check to you, right? Like, it's all wire, and you never see it. It's all, as we know, it's all sort of fake. So I'm asking her to write Christopher Kennedy a check for like $35,000, and I was shaking. I'm like, she's not going to give me this much money, and she did.
And
so people like that.
Well, what's
part of the growing, part of the growth.
Right?
Yeah, part of the growth. Yeah.
I went to Palm Springs when I was a teenager, and I always wanted to be a designer, but anyway. And I go to Palm Springs, and of course I see those restaurants with all the glass and the clean lines and the clean structure in the homes.
I didn't really answer your question. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so
in Paris,
to me, when you think of,
I laid in the like original Corbusier LC2 shade. They let we went to the Savoie house, which is like in the countryside in France. You have to drive there. And like literally, I have pictures I showed on a lecture recently. 5 of us kids like touring this Corbusier, a Villa Savoie with the original LC2 shades. They let you lay in it.
That's
People
amazing.
People didn't like it in 1999 when I was in school.
When you think of Palm Springs, you think of modern architecture and design.
Yeah. Right.
It just
but you know what? And so when I was starting out and I got to meet Wexler, Donald Wexler, who's an architect who also helped define desert modernism. And so Christopher's 101 brief history is there was like Mies and Corbusier in Europe, and it really all goes back to like the international style and the Bauhaus of the late 20s, I guess 100 years ago now. Right. And then, they were working in Europe, and then they came to America, and then their proteges, were, Sullivan and Kahn, doing work. And then on the East Coast, and like you think about a glass house in New Canaan, Philip Johnson, and it's this modernist box dropped in the landscape, but it's in Connecticut, and it's cold in Connecticut. And so you're looking at the landscape, but you're not really It isn't about connecting to it physically. It's more about looking at it. And then as their proteges in the 40s, moved, 30s and 40s and 50s, moved west to the climate, they were taking the principles of, the Bauhaus, the international style, and adapting it to our California climate. And they were using Palm Springs as like a living laboratory.
Yes.
For their ideas. And once they moved to California, it was about literally how do we open up these walls and how do we use post and beam and steel and glass to literally connect to the environment where I was looking at it on the East Coast or in Chicago. And so Donald Wexler, I got to meet him. He was still alive when I began my practice in like 03, 04, 05. And literally during the 90s and 80s, all these great, he invented he invented all these roof lines, the folded plate and the butterfly and all of these. Like the Incredibles house in the Disney Pixar movie is like a butterfly Wexler. Like these things are now pervasive and they're part of our lexicon. I mean, a 4-year-old can identify the style, but in the 90s, my point was, it was reviled and it was hated. In the early 2000s, so my mom loved the Santa Fe style. When I was going to these craft fairs, my mom and the homes that were touring as models, there was a Santa Fe style in the late 80s, early 90s, and they were taking these like Wexler butterfly roof lines and putting the coyotes and the peach and the blue and making it, and they were changing them. And he was still alive, and he was living in Palm Springs and looking at his homes being hated, right? And the story goes, and I choose to believe it, I've heard it so long, I'm sure like it's like an urban myth. The story goes that in the mid-90s, these two guys, because of course it was two gay guys from San Francisco, bought a Wexler house, and it had been bastardized and made Spanish in Santa Fe and all of that, which was popular again in 05 when I began my career. It was called Tuscan then, not Santa Fe. Right. And these two guys bought this house, and it had been bastardized. And they literally, you had phone books back then, and they looked up and they found that Mr. Wexler was still alive. And they literally called him and they said, Mr. Wexler, we bought one of your homes and we love it. And would you help us restore it? And like, it gets me every time, can you imagine living long enough that you've seen your work be built in the 50s and 60s, you've seen it be lived in, and then you've seen it be, go out of fashion and then come back in fashion. And he did. And he came over and he helped them restore it. And now, of course, Palm Springs is being restored all over. And I got to meet him before he died, and he told me that story. So.
Yeah, I mean, what a gift they gave him too, right? And just in a career path, right? I mean, to be able to see your work and your philosophy and approach to what you do with a passion actually not only appreciated but honored that way. I think that's a very powerful story.
There's now like Wexler weekend conference, and I tell kids when I I do lecture at my college, and I'm like, as architects and designers, we're building structures on this earth that are going to outlive us, and that's kind of a big deal. And other indigenous cultures understood the power of that and being sensitive and things having permanence that in our disposable culture is completely missed. But we're erecting structures on the earth, and that's sort of a big deal and responsibility.
Well, you're not just erecting structures, you're erecting not even boxes, you're erecting environments in which people live, and they're a reflection of where we are at. I mean, right? I mean, further, it's the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's the shelter, the food, whatever. I mean, this is right there in the top three. And the way we go about doing it is there's a reverence, I think, to what and people like Wexler. I mean, this is a commitment in what they do. It touches every aspect of it. Palm Springs has been an interesting thing. It always reminds me, Chris, that it's almost like, when we talk about the Medicis and we talk about Italy and we talk about all these patronages of artists and stuff like that, Palm Springs always struck me as where it was sort of like a sweet spot between all this money that was either entertainment driven or whatever, right? And you have all these sort of experimental, whether it was like the Eames or the Case Houses or something, and it happened is in every generation. I mean,
the Kaufman House, Frank Sinatra's Hobbs. When Frank hired E. Stewart Williams, he thought he wanted a traditional house, and E. Stewart Williams said, "I'm not giving you a traditional house. I'm building you a modern experiment, I guess you would say, right? Basically.
Right. But I mean, think about that conversation just in a different context with different people that Frank Lloyd Wright had about the falling water. I mean, it's funny how these things where you have this sort of patronage, almost like we talk about Renaissance and the Medicis, and how, there was an appreciation for certain things, and now, centuries later, we still look at them in reverence. It's very funny. And somebody like you, I think, that did not necessarily go down a traditional path. Like there was the whole bunch of happy accidents in the course of your path. You have almost a Renaissance appreciation to things. They just may be coded in a modernism feel, but I'm sure, a good example of of Santa Fe, you have an appreciation for that, or Spanish Revival, you have an appreciation for that. And there's a place and time for things. Just to close, not to close, but just to expand the circle on the modernism conversation. So
Sure.
It sounds like you were in a perfect spot at the time, a perfect storm with modernism. How does Modernism Week play into that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a perfect storm. I'm just a lucky guy again, but I also worked for it. So
Sure.
So Modernism Week, how I came to create the show house, if you want to talk about that, is I've been here for about 10 years and, kind of like, building a business, and you both have done it, and like you're kind of have your head in the sand. And I woke up one day 10 years later and realized I was sort of living into my own path, and I was doing okay. I could pay my bills, and I thought, I kind of wanted to give back after 10 years. And I bought a house, and I'd been, and I was in ASID. I am an ASID, and I was actually the president of ASID Palm Springs. And there was talk of a show house, which is I didn't invent the idea of a show house. Pasadena did 60 years ago, right? And ASID had been talking about why isn't there a showcase house in Palm Springs, as they have in Pasadena and Dallas and Kips Bay and Manhattan, and
everywhere.
Florida, everywhere has a show house, and we didn't have one in Palm Springs. And for 2 or 3 years, I've been talking of sort of bringing it back, and ASID had tried, but I think it's a big deal, as it's
a huge overtaking.
It's a huge undertaking. Yeah. But I've been told I don't know what I shouldn't do. So I thought, okay, it isn't happening. I'll just create it. And I always give credit where credit's due. And Windsor Smith, a wonderful icon designer, had just built a ground up house the year before in West LA, and called it the House of Windsor. Yes. And she had brands involved, and she bought an equestrian property and built a house from the ground up. And Gwyneth Paltrow bought it for like $14 million. Mine was much more modest. So I bought a little house, but a great little mid-century house in Palm Springs. Thought, you know what? I'll just create a show house. And if Windsor can call it the House of Windsor, I can call it the Christopher Kennedy Compound. And so I did. And I just called designers who I knew and admired, and like Celery Kemble and Woodson and Rummerfields and June Ho and Thomas Lavin. Didn't think they'd all say yes, and they did. And then I called brands I knew and loved, like, Wolf Sub-Zero, and I didn't think they'd all say yes, and they did, and Cosentino. And I was like, well, shoot, now I have to pull this off. Mm-hmm. So that's how the first show house happened. And I literally had to go to Modernism and meet with the board, and I was so nervous. It was not a sure bet. Like, it was not. I mean, I didn't think it was a sure thing. I had one board member who was a champion who wanted to bring interior design into this great week called, that really, it began as like an antique show at the convention center. And this is 10 years into Modernism. Actually, it was started the first year. Actually, Modernism Week started the year I began my business. So we've kind of grown up together. But I approached them and said, would you want to have a show house? And they said yes. And it became the most popular event and their single biggest fundraising event. And we've done 5 of them now for Modernism Week.
With ASID?
Not with ASID, no.
No, with Modernism. Yeah.
With Modernism Week, which is a 501c3. It is a charity, and they quietly give scholarships to local design and architecture students. I try to make it not so quiet. And Modernism Week, because they have this big fundraising juggernaut, last year, like 100,000 people from 20 countries in 49 states came to Palm Springs to celebrate our history of architecture and design. And yes, it is a perfect storm. Like, this TV show called Mad Men came out, and there was this, resurgence, and it was a perfect storm. And I'm so grateful that I got to be part of it and, make mid-century style prominent, and to put Palm Springs really was about the town I knew and loved. It kind of rolled up its streets.
Yeah.
Like Palm Springs kind of went through a downturn, and like the
Mm-hmm.
storefronts were not busy. All the growth had moved, to the suburbs. We do have suburbs, and it wasn't that cool. But I thought it was beautiful and unique, and I wanted to me, it was about celebrating our history and putting our best foot forward to the world and putting it into magazines. And so I wanted to bring back the best of Palm Springs style and to call, world-class designers, because I think Palm Springs is a world-class resort town.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't call there's great local designers. I didn't call them. I called some of the best designers in the country to interpret Palm Springs style through their lens. Like, we've had Celery Kemble and Michael Berman and Martin Lawrence Millard and on, all unique rooms in my show house over 5 years. I'm so grateful to them. And it's just, we've raised over $500,000 now for preservation of architecture in Palm Springs. And it's been my labor of love for 5 years.
What do you think, Chris? That's an amazing legacy and amazing accomplishments, and you're just getting started. I mean, it's on this. No, seriously, I think, we've been fortunate enough to be able to watch it, right? And for some of us, I think that style has always had an appeal. I mean, even if we were, I was born in '65, so you could argue that, that passed me by. It wasn't something that happened in my time. But I think that and I don't know what the answer is, so I'm going to ask the question. What do you think is this appeal? Because the style definitely has an appeal. Is it the simplicity? Is it the sophistication through simplicity? Is it the universal appeal of that? You sort of almost like a utopian approach? Because there's definitely an appeal that is wider and global for this style. And it was there when they were doing the case study houses. It was there. I mean, is it the experimentalness of it? Because what is it? I mean, you live in this space. Do you have any feelings?
That's a big question. I mean, for me, it's complicated. Yeah. It's about, to me, like, I'm nostalgic, I think, more than modernist. And I think that maybe there was things in the 60s that were not good socially and equality wise. Certainly. Right. I'm going to overlook that.
The lava lamp.
I'm going to overlook that for a second and just say that I think, grace and style and manners and a more simple time, like when people got dressed to go on airplanes and families would sit down to dinner together and talk and not text, and you would make a phone call and not send a text. And, you could kids could ride their bikes until sundown, as I did in the 80s. I think that maybe as our society has gotten more fractured and more complicated, and as lives have gotten, all this technology has actually made us busier and not less busy. I think that maybe we, subconsciously as a society have a yearning for a simpler, more gracious time in a world of ugliness and being able to name call on Twitter. I think that a return to grace and style and manners would be nice. So maybe subconsciously we have a yearning for that. And so for me, it's as much about the life behind the style and not just, for me, nostalgia is not about just a Nemes chair or, a Nelson lamp. It's about the best parts of that era. And there were some bad parts, of course, as well today. So I think that's maybe part of it. And I think as our lives have gotten busier, we do want to surround ourselves with fewer things and things that have meaning, and moms are busy and both parents are working, and you don't have time for tassels and trim and all of these things. So I think that simplifying your environment in an increasingly complex world does have an appeal. Yes.
So if you can't do it to your immediate life, at least maybe you could do it to your environment. That's
I think we should get dressed to go on airplanes and out to dinner. And I think that we should send handwritten thank you notes. And my mom raised me with these things. And honestly, sending handwritten thank you notes have helped me my entire career. When I was a 25-year-old in LA, I got access to amazingly wonderful people who I wanted to meet and learn from. And I did it by literally sending them a handwritten note. I mean,
I'll be sure to send you a handwritten
note. Not, unattractive, might have helped, but I put the manners behind that and I backed it up with courtesy and manners. And it's helped me my entire career. Yeah. So I think there are wonderful things that we can learn from the mid-century. And it's as much about the style and the manners and grace as it is about the furniture.
So you said that you're teaching at a local school, or you get a chance to lecture, right?
I will not say that I teach. I occasionally lecture.
Okay, so what would you say? Because one of the things you and I talked about a little bit off the air, and I think it's you're a great example of this, is that again, every generation of designers or architects or people that are, let's say, in a creative expression fields, they have their own rhythm. They find their own voice, right? And I think you've done that. You've dared to go there, if you will, from very early on, and just see where the road and the bend in the road takes you. What do you when you have a chance to basically have the ear of some people that are starting, that they're kind of like shaky a little bit, they're like, this is something I feel passionate about, how much of this should I like learn about, how much of it should I just go do, they're just kind of trying to find, they're starting to find their footings, I think. I had a chance to teach at the Art Institute of California for a couple of years before they closed it. So what would you say to those people, Christopher? Because it's a challenging field that we are in as well, right? And what do you say to them? What are some of the advice that you could give them?
That's a really good question, and
I can come back to it if you don't.
No. I have an answer. I feel like a hypocrite when I say this, because I actually think that there is in our industry a bit of a false carrot about like fame and licensing and TV. And I feel like a hypocrite when I say that, because I've done those things and that was my path. But I actually think that you mentioned earlier, how much as designers I mentioned, being modern, but we touch people's lives, and something that I do as interior designer, I wouldn't do as, quote, just an architect, is we figure out where people are going to keep their socks and how they're going to do their homework with their kids, and where that's going to happen. And the rooms that we create can set them up for success, and it impacts their lives as a personal basis, that being invited into someone's home, I consider it really an honor and a privilege. We're not just making it pretty, we're literally impacting their lives on a fundamental level that changes their lives or informs their lives on a daily basis, from the room that they open their eyes to when they wake up in the morning, or a great room that gives them a big hug after a long day out in a scary world. We really are fundamentally affecting people in a very serious way. It's an honor and a privilege I take very seriously, to be invited into someone's home to create the stage where they'll live their human drama. It's really amazing. And I think I'll get back to it, being a good designer and making money at it and serving your clients is actually an undervalued thing in our profession. Like, everyone wants a licensing deal. I have a couple. You don't make a ton of money. Like, I'm going to put that out there right now. Like, just be a good designer, do a good job. Like the guy who I worked for all of 7 months, Randy Patton, you've never heard his name, and that's okay. He's doing $1 million furniture packages. I'm frankly not. Maybe 1 in 5 of mine are. Like, just be a good designer, serve your clients. And I think that is an underrated goal in our profession. You don't need to be on TV. You don't need a licensing deal or a book. Like, just do a good job and serve your clients and make a good living. That's really great advice. I mean,
I'll tell you one thing that was like one of the biggest compliments I got recently, and it was right through the COVID situation. When this thing hit, we were in the process of finishing 2 houses, and one of them, and they were both like, I don't know, I'd say late 70s, maybe, like nice property, a good location, people wanting to buy them, but they want to open them up. They want to have more of a modern living style in there, right? So we were doing that. And one of them, she called me. We had just finished doing the kitchen, and they needed to move in the house because their house that they were in sold. So it's like, all this, and then COVID, and it's all, and you're really, to your point, you're that confidant, you're that sort of like therapist, you're sort of like it'll be okay, we'll walk through this, you're not alone kind of thing, right? Which, how do I bill for that exactly, right? That's not that's your human, that's you being a human.
Talk about that next if you want, but that's a whole podcast probably. I have too much coffee or wine, I talk about that too.
No, it's okay.
I'll go there in a minute.
I'm not cutting you off, but it's really funny. She texted me, Chris, one morning. And she said to me, I love my kitchen. I wanted a particular kind of kitchen. You gave me the kitchen. I'm thinking she's going to say, countertop. She's going to say this, right? No, what she said was that she was loving the fact that she was in her kitchen with her daughter cooking.
Yeah.
It was the making of the memories of her cooking with her daughter. That's what was the value. And it was really very humbling to basically be able to say, wow, and I told her, I said, that's really gracious of you to tell me that. And thank you so much for taking the time, because it's no small deal that I positively impacted your relationship with your daughter like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I've done the things, I've done the books and the licensing, and it's those, big reveals or those texts later, even more so, that are the best part of the job.
Yeah, that really get you. Yeah, yeah. Bill, you were going to ask something. I cut you off. Sorry.
Well, ASID has spent a lot of money doing research and surveys for students, and we've been consistently losing students at interior design schools, and
Really?
less and less students want to own their own business. Most of them want to go into the commercial or hospitality side of the business. So you were talking about generationals. I mean, when I went to design school a long time ago, that's all everybody wanted to do was start their own business and help the clients. No one wanted to work for someone else.
Really?
And I know we are having difficulty here in Orange County in ASID trying to get young people, because they all work for someone. We have very few young ASID members who have their own business. So that's just interesting. I think it's a generational thing too.
That is interesting. I feel like young people want to work for someone maybe until they actually go do it. Because I think they're not, I'm 44, so I think I'm kind of like in between maybe,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what my generation is called. I forget. I guess I'm X. I'm not sure. I think they're not used to, if people in their 20s are not used to being told no, and they've been given a lot of things. And
Yeah.
like I went to my nephew's 6th grade graduation a few years ago, and like everyone had to get a certificate. And of course they had the cap and gown. Like, I didn't have a cap and gown when I graduated from 6th grade. Like, they haven't been told no a whole lot. So going to work for someone and having to do something you're told to do, we'll see how that goes. But maybe it's scary. And I do not, I would not want to be a kid graduating college. It was hard enough for me 20 years ago to find a job. I think it is difficult.
Well, at Ethan Allen, we have several design assistants, and most of them are in their mid-20s, early 30s. And I'm not kidding. We've gone through, in the 5 years we've been there, we've gone through 6, 7, and they all say, oh, this is just a design assistant. This is just too much work. I'm like, you don't meet clients. You put the quote together, you do the 3D and the floor plan maybe. Yeah. You don't get the texts, you don't worry about it's too much work. They want to go work, they want to sit at a computer doing CAD, and they don't want to have to deal with the client. It's fascinating.
Yeah, but I had that, Bill. I had that.
So, I guess I look at that as a win-win. I think, when I got stressed out and thought I was too busy, I realized like I found a wonderful young lady in North Carolina who is helping me with those CAD renderings. I absolutely, and she's happy to do that.
Good,
and barely, but it frankly isn't a lot of money, but I'm sure it's a lot of money in North Carolina, and it's a great win-win. So, absolutely, we need that too. So.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, I mean, I remember like 2000 maybe, when I had some people that were working on the hospitality, and I think you're right in it's generational, because I think work ethic changes as the economic realities, as the struggles are different. But think back about like before the dot bomb, the tech bomb basically blew up. Like think about what people's expectations were. Like you were lucky if you found somebody that had stayed in their job more than 18 months, because they were basically jumping from one thing to the other, better salary, blah, blah, blah. People were hiring them. So what happens when that person hits the wall and realizes, oops, that was 10 years of complete illusion, and the reality is different. So I think every generation goes through that. I think right now we have opportunities that to outsource, to engage and collaborate with people wider, across geography, across time zones, that is so easy to do. That it's exciting, actually. It's exciting to be open to that.
And when I get stressed out and think I don't have enough support, because my team is not huge, I'm like, there's resources out there. We just have to find them. So anyway, we can move on to a happier topic.
Well, I want to share with you something. I don't know if you know, but I live in San Clemente, and if this is something I've said to you before, then just bear with me for a second. But there is an architect, gentleman, that is in Palm Springs. I do believe he's still alive, by the name of Hugh Capter.
Yes, he was amazing. Absolutely.
Right. Hugh, basically, it's really funny because Spanish revival is very much the language in San Clemente, as you know, right? And I was on the historical society for about 15 years. And one of the things that I was trying to do was trying to sort of tap into the local culture and sort of sense of importance for things. And one of the things that we have that's homegrown is a taco place called Pedro's Tacos, which pretty much any child that has gone to San Clemente High School has been weaned on Pedro's Tacos probably from the age of 5. And so there's a couple of locations. Bill's going, where is this going?
No, I've heard of that place too.
Okay, yeah. Pedro's Tacos is really good. Actually, pretty good. It's really good, really good. They have a couple of burritos. You just like, I think I might just have to go get one for breakfast now. But the thing is that they have 2 locations, and one of the locations that was more recently they occupied is a building that has very strong mid-century modern lines. It has the pivot that, you know, and it's all decorative. It's not really a roof line, right? So I was just curious, and I was trying to tap into historical elements and food and try to bring that together and have a little event. Turns out that building, which used to be a real estate office, is actually a Hugh Captor building.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it is his first commission when he was basically at Camp Pendleton, and his wife, I think it was at the time, her family was in real estate. And so he designed a little thing for them. It's a small little, maybe 2-room little office. And that is now houses an iconic food purveyor in San Clemente. Yeah, so I'm just sharing that with you because
absolutely, we should talk to Hugh about that. And something that people don't know. So we spoke about, you know, patronage and all those things. So one of the most famous photographs in the world is called Poolside Gossip, and I'm sure you've seen it, and our viewers have seen it. It's at the Kaufman House in Palm Springs, taken by Slim Aarons, and there's 2 beautiful women wearing yellow and white sitting by a pool. Helen Captor is one of those women.
Wow.
Captor and his wife were at that party, as was Arthur Elrod and some other, I guess, people in the design and building world. And Slim Aarons came and took the photo, and it's now one of the most famous photographs in the world. I actually have a 5-foot by 8-foot version of it framed in acrylic hanging at my showroom. It just sold to a designer in Las Vegas for a commercial space for over $6,000. And actually my husband's driving it up there on Monday because that's what you do when you own your own business. Right. I don't trust anyone else to move a 5 by 8 famous photo framed in acrylic. We're driving up there. But yes, actually Helen Captor is one of the women in Poolside Gossip. And Hugh has he's gotten
I would love the opportunity
more and more in the last few years, so that's wonderful.
Yeah, I would love to have a conversation with him. I think that I actually just ordered. There's a DVD on him called The Quiet Architect or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I think it came out last year. So yes, sort of the next one who's
here it is.
Finally getting his day in the sun.
Poolside Gossip.
Yeah, that's the picture.
Yeah. So Helen Captor, I believe, is on the left. His wife.
Chris, I am going to find and send you, again, to show this sort of continuity and how this is not like, it's not a snapshot. It's actually a film that people's lives are represented in their work, right? Body work. I'm going to send you, because one time when I was in design school, I actually looked through some old photographs. My father, like I said, was a civil engineer, and we lived on a construction camp in Abu Dhabi when there was nothing in Abu Dhabi, when they were building the first airport infrastructure bridge. And I was looking through some photographs when I happened to just be in design school. I was bored one Sunday or something. I was looking through photographs. And I had just done Bauhaus, and I had just done all that movement, all this stuff, right? And the Architects Collaborative, and, you know, Gropius and all this stuff, right? And I knew that my dad at some point had worked with TAC, their local office in Kuwait, but I didn't really connect the dots together. Turns out I have photos of Walter Gropius at a barbecue in Abu Dhabi in black and white. Wow. In a photo album that we have, because my father happened to be at that barbecue, because it's like a job site barbecue. So here are these people basically, right? Yeah. I'm gonna have to find that picture and send you a copy of it, because it's see we elevate these people.
I'm gonna make sure I send Christopher a handwritten thank you note for being on the show.
Chris, I'm sorry.
I want to get put on the bad list.
No. Bill, you write the card. I will just sign it, and then I'll put the photo in there.
You have to send your own card.
Okay, fine. I'll send my own card.
Card for the taco place would be appreciated too. I'll talk to you. Okay.
And I would love to. We never got a chance to do that. and I really would love to do it. Okay, so I'll come clean. So when I had this idea, I called Palm Springs, right? And I'm like, okay. And I called, I think it was the nonprofit, the Modernism nonprofit. And then I basically got this lady on the phone, and I was just trying to be very diplomatic because I don't know, is he alive? Is he not alive? So I made a reference, and she says to me, oh yes, no, he's very much alive. And I'm like, okay, sorry, I apologize. But sorry?
Christopher is our
like Elrod
CK.
died at 48, and Steve Chase passed away young. But actually, briefly, I can probably go find Hugh because he built a 70s complex, which has been renamed Capture Plaza 2 years ago. And both my favorite coffee house and my favorite wine bar are in that complex now. It's called Capture Plaza for Hugh Capture. And there is on the side, on the directory, it says like Hugh Capture AIA. So he has an office there. So I'll just go to coffee or get a glass of wine, and I'll go track him down, you guys. Sure.
I will drive up, Chris, and I will bring Pedro's tacos.
Okay. I'll buy you coffee in the morning and wine at night. Is that a deal? There we go. Okay. Tacos, everyone wins.
I don't get invited, but that's all right.
No.
I wanted to ask you, CK, thank you. Is Modernism going to be held this October again, as far as you know, or are there any new?
I do not know. I am not on the board of Modernism. I actually don't plan the event. I just plan one of the most popular events.
So are you doing
I don't
it?
know yet.
Not probably going to be involved going forward. I kind of am pivoting. It's been a wonderful relationship, and I wish Modernism the best. We're going to be taking our show houses a bit more virtual, given today's society. So I'm probably going to make an announcement soon. Probably doing it more, via video and via the web. So I get to bring it to a broader audience. I'm not sure what Modernism is going to be doing. Honestly, the whole world has changed, as you know. Yeah. So October. Because these are private homes, you guys. People all think oh, can I go tour 5 great houses?
Right.
Yeah. People live in these homes, so these are private homes that the homeowners tend to be very generous, and they open them up. They're not getting compensated, and they get people to walk through them. So will that be the same going forward? I mean, I don't know. The house I create is meant to be a public event. That's why it's the biggest fundraiser, because my clients who own the homes, the show houses, expect that, and they open it for a week, and about 5,000 people tour it, and we raise a lot of money. It is a lot of work, so I'm actually not going to be doing it going forward. I'm going to be doing it more virtually, so stay tuned for that. And frankly, I don't know what.
That sounds interesting.
It's a wonderful week in October and February.
Right.
I'm not sure what it will look like. They actually haven't announced that yet.
Well, it's funny. What's funny about that is, once again, you are sort of pivoting and reading the tea leaves, if you will, because a lot of conferences, a lot of places are changing that. And I think anybody who's tried to put any of these things on in one size or the other realizes just how much investment of time and resources goes into it. And then you're really kind of hoping against all hope, and you have a successful event like Modernism Week, but you're hoping that you actually can make enough to justify the effort, and then keep repeating it. But if there's an alternative where you can still convey, raise awareness, whatever, and maybe even to be honest, maybe do more exposure. I mean, we just had, I'm an ambassador for Global Wellness Day, and which is started by a lady out of Turkey, a friend of mine, Belgian, Aksoy, and she basically this year did 24 hours of live feed on YouTube from all over the world with all these ambassadors. Not what they've done in the past, but it just blew the lid on other opportunities that could happen. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to see what you come up with for this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a wonderful week. Hopefully our week will go on. But, again, we've in the past gotten people from, 49 states and 20 countries. And unfortunately, the world isn't the same. So I'm not sure what it's going to look like. But I'm sure it will happen in some way, shape, or form. And please do come back to Palm Springs for Modernism. But I'll be doing things online at the same time.
Yeah, let us know whatever we can do on our end to help with this. Yeah,
that would be fabulous to have that on our show, the virtual.
Okay, I'd be honored. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, I was giggling under my breath when you said journalism earlier, and when you said right. No, only because I was giggling because I'm like, well, of course, now it all makes sense, right? I mean, your digital content development has been fresh and on all the time, and it's very candid and honest and vulnerable. So it's very much timely. But now it's like, okay, the journalism, I get it now. I see the connection.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
Sometimes I don't, so I'm glad that you can see.
I got it. I see what you're doing.
You guys. Oh my
It's
gosh.
it's very inspirational, Chris. I mean, seriously, I like watching what you're doing because there is an authenticity to it that really speaks not only to the field and your sharing of your passion, but it also is informative, and you're very generous, I think, with your share, how you share
With
with
your time, yeah.
your time, your subcontractors. You know, it's not, like you said, it's not about, hey, look at me. You're obviously there, but you're also part of, you know, you're very generous in sharing that credit, and it's very heartwarming, really.
It just takes it. And like when I hear about designers, because we don't always have a good reputation, and sometimes we're known for being diva, this and that. And I've heard that my whole career for 15 years now. I'm like, I just don't understand that. Like, I'm very privileged. I've never painted a wall in my life. Like, literally, I've never picked up a paintbrush. So you can be sure that when I walk onto a job site, I am saying please and thank you to those trades, because they make or break us. I mean, right? You guys, like, I can have the ideas, and that's wonderful, but these talented men and women who are on these job sites are making me look good or making me look bad.
Yeah.
And so you can be sure that I treat them with courtesy and respect, as I think every human being who is made in the image and likeness of God deserves to be treated with respect. But for you know, a designer to walk onto a job site and act like a diva, I just don't.
Well, that's, I think, from some TV shows that are on.
Obviously,
the TV shows kind of promote that attitude, you know.
Yeah, there's truth. There's always you know, there's no smoke without fire, Bill.
You have to have drama, honest, you know, to have a.
We do have some. We do some have.
One bad apple can ruin a bunch, I guess. So I'd like to think that they're few and far between.
Right.
And maybe a couple of them give us a bad name. So I do my part to give us a good name, because I think in general designers are not rich people. They're hardworking. And they just love what they do, and they love changing lives through design. And they would do it for free if they could, because they love what they do, and they shouldn't do it for free. And we'll do a separate video about building, because we've already gone too long. But I think designers are a wonderful group, and they're hardworking, and they care so much to a fault sometimes. And so I fall into that category, I guess.
No, you said it. People bring us into their homes from a position of trust, and we're there, and we can impact them positively or negatively. So I hate to put it this way, because, you know, like first responders have been really critical, but we do provide care. It's just a different kind of care. And I think we need to embrace that and remember that. And there's a certain amount of humility, I think, that comes with that.
Yes.
And that's a very good point to end on. Chris, just, if you wouldn't mind, how can people find out about you? What is the website? Are the books available still? How can they get them?
My first book, California Modern, is out of print, or sold out, however you want to put it. You can buy Making Mid-Century Modern.
I'll do the Vanna.
On Amazon. You can buy it, I think, on my own store. So we did launch online retail. I used the downturn during COVID to focus on that. So you can find my website, ChristopherKennedy.com. I'm there. We have a new blog and a new online shopping, and probably 12 projects that haven't been published before. So lots of inspiration there.
Beautiful,
and
beautiful work.
You know, I do write and do videos and kind of get personal there at Christopher Kennedy INC Inc. So,
and you write very well. Yeah, very well.
Thank you very much. We really enjoyed having you on the show, and I hope you have a great weekend. And everything goes well for you with the launch of the website. A beautiful furniture, by the way, too.
Good collection, yeah, lovely collection, Christopher. And please let us know. I mean, I would love to follow up with you on trying to get Mr. Captor maybe involved, or like meet him at least. It's a personal goal, if you will. That's on my bucket list. But
I can be a connector and spread the love. That always brings me joy, and I love paying it forward. So let's do that. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
you.
weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for having me.
You too. It was a lot of fun.